So, welcome to the world of Job, part one. And so, give me some hearts if you can hear me. I can barely see you because we're kind of in a scene where God's looking down from the heavens and seeing what Job's up to. And so, Job's name is from the Hebrew name, which means persecuted. Go ahead and mute all. And judging by the style of Hebrew it uses, some scholars believe Job to be the most ancient book of the Bible. I mean, that's pretty hardcore. Job was not an Israelite. Job was wealthy, and the Bible calls him the greatest of all men of the East during that time. And this is just some, random research. It can be estimated that Job's wealth today would have been well over $200 million in modern day value. So Job was rolling in the wealth. And wealth was measured in terms of the number of animals he possessed. Like Abraham, and it was not in talent. So we know this book is very old. And so in Job 1:1-5, in the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. And this man, remember this word, was blameless and upright, and he feared God, and he shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys. And he had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. So if I could have Mr. Ramsey read these 2 scriptures, that would be awesome. See if I can unmute him.
Early in the morning would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's regular custom. His sons used to hold feasts in their homes on their birthdays. They would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ramsey. Ramsey is a professional golfer in VR, by the way, just throwing it out there. So early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them. Now, keep in mind, this is a lot of kids. He's got 10 kids. And perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's regular custom. And Job offered continually. And this also was according to the law in Exodus 29:42 that says, "This shall be a continual burnt offering throughout your generations." And he feared God so much that he ensured his children were purified and following the feast by making sacrifices to atonement for their sins, just in case. I mean, that's an amazing example of a father. And the thing is, that's not cheap. That'd be like if Joe was my son, which he's not, but if I was like, all right, I gotta sacrifice a bull, that's a lot of money. I got this other kid. I got just in case they have sinned. And so this is a scene that I feel like it's kind of abstract, but I feel like if God was looking down on us, what does he see? And so let's head over to the next scene. 1 second. So the teleport button's right over here. Milky Way. So just hit the green button and I'll meet you over there. Then just real quick, so yeah, if I could have Ramsey, if you guys want to hang out here, if I could have Ramsey read the scriptures up there, and then we'll tell the story here because I don't want to quite go up there yet. Appreciate it, man.
Job 1:6-12 says, one day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? Satan answered the Lord, from roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it. Then the Lord said to Satan, you considered my servant Job. There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Does Job fear God for nothing? Satan replied. Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has. It will surely curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, Very well, then. Everything he has is in your power. On the man himself, do not lay a finger. And Satan went out from the presence of the Lord.
Awesome. Thank
Something
you so
growling
much.
up here.
Oh yeah, that's the lion of Judah. And so now there was
Oh,
a
man.
day. Yep. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where do you come?" And Satan and the sons of God appear in both passages before the Lord. Now it's important to notice that the sons of God presented themselves before God. Therefore, since the holy angels in heaven are continually in the presence of God, according to Matthew 18:10, the sons of God are, I guess you could consider, we don't know, could be not holy of angels, and but instead they could be the followers of Satan. And so Satan has his own kingdom. Satan isn't his name. The word is used to describe his character as slanderer, which is the one who goes around making accusations of others. And his followers are demons or angels who were cast out of heaven along with Satan. And Jesus states that he saw Satan cast out of heaven like lightning in Luke 10:18-20. And he replied, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from the heaven, and I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. However, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven." And then Revelation 12:9, the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him. And so the fact that they came to present themselves before the Lord shows that these angelic beings, these falling angelic beings, have access to the presence of God. Pretty crazy. And not sure how long they can withstand it. I mean, I'm sure they're jumping out of their skin. And so we are introduced in the 2 chapters of Job to the character of Satan. And Satan only appears on 3 occasions in the Old Testament: in the Garden of Eden, which you guys are all familiar with, even if you don't believe in God, in the book of Job, in a reference in Zechariah. They're given a view behind the scenes here. This is a view behind the scenes. There is this battle between God and Satan, which kind of opens up your eyes to the spiritual realm. And so it says, "The Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou?" Then Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it." And so Satan is not omnipresent. He's not omniscient, which I'm butchering that word. He doesn't even know everything that's going on like our God. It seems that he is accountable before God. And so what's pretty wild about that, he has to operate under permission, as you'll see, or have a legal right in someone's life. And Jesus gives the demons permission to enter the story of the pigs. And it says in Matthew 8:29-33, "And behold, they cried out, What have you to do with us, O Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Now a herd of many pigs was feeding at some of the distance from them. And the demons begged him, saying, "If you cast us out, send us away into the herd of pigs." And he said to them, "Go." So they came out and went into the pigs, and behold, the whole hundred rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the waters. And Satan has access to heaven, but he also has free access to earth. 1 Peter 5:8, "Be sober, be diligent, because your adversary, the devil, he walks around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour." And in Ephesians 6:12, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over the present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places." And so it's going to go fast after this. I'm just dropping some stuff in here. "And then the Lord said to Satan, Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him, no one. He is blameless." And that word is used for blameless in Hebrew is tamim. This word is a special word in Hebrew. It's full of meaning. The biblical text, the word tamim, is used to describe someone who is blameless, pure, and perfect. The word's actual definition means perfect. It does not lack anything, without defect, fault, shortcoming, or blemish. And the first time we hear this word, it's used in Genesis 6:9 when describing who Noah was. It's written that Noah was a just man and Tamim in his generations, perfect, and Noah walked with God. And in Exodus 12:5, it speaks of the Passover lamb, which you know who that represents. And your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Again, the word tamim being the original word. And so Job shunned evil. Again, more Hebrew words he used for shunned is sur, which means to turn aside, to depart, to avoid, to be removed, take away, put away, dispose, to come to an end. The Hebrew word for evil is ra, which means bad, unpleasant, and evil, meaning that Job distanced himself from evil things and he was blameless. And here's the part that's kind of the whole point of the story. Does Job fear God for nothing? Satan asked. And the word nothing in Hebrew means out of favor. Does he fear the Lord for free without accepting anything in return? Do we fear the Lord because he deserves it or as a motive to get something out of it? I mean, I'm not trying to be preachy, but I kind of do. I kind of bank on God, like, hook me up with this thing, this and that. I'm asking him for his favor, which I know he gives it to me. But the book deals with how God will prove to Satan that Job is fearing God for nothing, for free. Not because God blessed him, and we know he surely was blessed by the book's intro. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. In other words, I know what would happen if you removed the blessings, his nice house, his friends, and that hedge of protection that you got. And Job will openly curse you to your face. Nobody wants to serve God if there's no payoff, nothing in return, and no blessings. But Job didn't know. This is crazy. This is like us in life. Job didn't know that Satan and God were discussing him in the heavenly council here, and that he's part of this spiritual battle we're about to walk through. And we know about it, but he didn't. He was completely in the dark about the events that happened to him. And just like many times when we walk in faith and face trials and tribulations, it's just like that. And so we'll head to the next scene. And Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. And so we'll head over to the next scene up here. Be careful teleporting here, because you'll fall through. And so yeah, the green button's right here. All right. All right, guys, this is the part we jump. Jump. Yeah, so that was fun, you know, how we're here on earth. And so I'll go ahead and read the scriptures. And it says, one day when Job's son and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, a messenger came to Job and he said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby, and the Sabians attacked and made off with them. And they put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. Go ahead and mute all, hearing some wild dogs. And so this was a raiding party from the kingdom of Sheba, hundreds of miles away in the area of modern Yemen. And the Sabians or Arabian raid is typical of life in the desert of the Middle East, and both in ancient and modern times. And it fits right in with the time of Abraham and Isaac. So we know this is an old book, almost maybe one of the most ancient books in the Bible. And so basically, Abraham too dealt with raiders who came from hundreds of miles away against Sodom, Gomorrah, in Genesis 14. And so what's pretty wild right here is Satan has authority to mess with Job. And so this is what happens. So he's, his sons and daughters were feasting, drinking wine, just having a little party. And sure enough, they come and the oxen were plowing, donkeys were grazing nearby, and they attacked. They put the servants to the sword. And so, yeah, feel free to walk around the scenes, and this part's going to go pretty quick. This is going to be a different kind of story. The green button's right here. Just go ahead and hit that for the next scene. So I'll go ahead and read this one. It says, while he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the fire of God has fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants. And I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. More bad news. So I'm going to get away from the lightning so I can hear. And so the expression of the fire of God may refer to lightning. And at the edge of the desert east of Israel, where Job may have lived, the land is high, it's a windy plateau. Most of the year, the grass is very dry, and brush fires are dangerous. Here's the thing, he doesn't know what's going on here. Fire of God is, they said the fire of God has fallen from heaven. They're attributing these calamities to that of God, not knowing the heavenly council that just took place is the work of Satan. We kind of overheard. Let's head over to the next scene here. Green buttons right here. So, and then I'll go ahead, I'll wait for everyone to spawn in here. Got some of the camels hanging out. And so it says, while he was still speaking, this has all happened super rapid fire. This is a very hard book to just talk about because it's just, it's almost like ancient poetry. There's a lot of dialogue, but I'll tie it into the end with Jesus, of course. And while he was still speaking, this is the third thing that happened. While he was still speaking, another messenger came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on your camels and made off with them. And they put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. And so the Chaldeans were a Semitic group that later ruled the city of Babylon. And they are located, just a few miles from modern Baghdad in Iraq. And in Job's culture, wealth was determined by a person's herd and its flocks. And one day, just in a matter of minutes, Job's entire fortune was gone. He had no work and he had no workers. The greatest and richest man in the East is now totally broke. And so let's head over to the next scene here. Right by the, watch out for that camel. It may spit on you. Right here. Yes. And so another thing happens, the worst of all. I'm just so thankful that God has a hedge of protection around us. I mean, for real. So while he was still speaking, yet another messenger came and said, your sons and daughters, all 10 of them, were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house. When suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert. It struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are dead. I am the only one who has escaped to tell you. Just when you think you're having a bad day. I mean, this is all in a matter of minutes. So I don't know what to say about this. I have nothing to say about this scene. Is that he's in? I mean, I can't imagine the feeling he has. And they said some scholars and commentators believe that this was a tornado that came through. And again, Satan has permission. He has legal right to do this right now. And so let's head over to the next scene, which is the green button here. I see a D. Willis. I think he's in one of these homes. Maybe make him thinner. Yep. And then here we are. And at this, after all these events, what happens? After all these events that happened, I mean, I don't know what I would do. And this is, I mean, God's looking down on earth and it's like, he's the only blameless one. At this, Job got up and he tore his robe and he shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship. And he said these famous lines, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. But then he says, may the name of the Lord be praised in all this. Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. I don't know, man. This is a heavy book. And so he fell to the ground and he worshiped in the midst of his mourning. Job decided to worship God despite his circumstances and feelings. The tearing of one's clothes It's an ancient tradition among the Jews. It's associated with mourning, grief, and loss. And sometimes tearing one's clothes was accompanied by other signs of humility and grief, such as shaving one's head, throwing dust on oneself, and wearing sackcloth. And so this was just a tradition. And one tradition says the mourner must tear the clothing over the heart. It's a sign of a broken heart. And so, right over to the next scene. Here is the green button right over here. I'll see you in there. So let's all pretend we're back up in that heaven scene again. And I don't want to teleport back up there. And so again, there was a day. This is another occurrence that happened from that scene in heaven we saw. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where have you come?" Again, he repeats the same thing. He answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil? He still holds fast his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without reason." And then Satan says, he answered the Lord and said, "Skin for skin." Now, these are some lines that people still use. Some of these old ancient lines. I'm going to mute all real quick. And so he says, "Skin for skin. All that a man has, he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand and touch his bone and flesh, he will curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Hold, he is in your hand. Only spare his life." That's scary. I mean, that's basically like, you can't kill this dude. You can do everything you want to him, but you can't kill him. And so the scriptures, I'll go ahead and read them. It says that, "So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. And then Job took a piece of broken pottery." You'll see the pottery there. Yeah, that's got to be pretty bad when you're doing that. "And he scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. And his wife said to him, 'Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die.' In all this, Job, he did not sin. What he said, he replied, 'You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?'" And so Job's wife gets a bad rap from this scene. You got to keep in mind, she had lost her children, all 10 of them, her home, her wealth, and now she watched her husband suffer in excruciating pain, and her comments uh, almost match what Job's three friends will say later. And they kind of reflect it in their speeches to Job. Let's head over to the next scene. Green buttons right here. I'm gonna go ahead. I'll read this one, and I really am gonna say the names all wrong, so give me some benefit. "So when Job's three friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shunammite, and Zophar the Nemanite, oh my gosh, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and they met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. And when they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep out loud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. And then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights." The number 7 means something. And no one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. And so, but their silence did not last forever. And so I want you guys to go back and read the book. We're going to have I feel like a powerful moment of worship after all this. It's going to tie in with Jesus, but we will have a part 2. But we're skipping some stuff, but we'll come back for a part 2. So their silence doesn't last forever. And these 3 men gave a series of speeches to Job, It's recorded in chapters 4 through 25. Go back and read them. The speeches of Job's three friends include many inaccuracies involving why God allows people to suffer. And they believe that Job was suffering because he persistently try to get Job to admit he's wrong and repent so that God would bless him again. If you're around people like that, just be careful. And his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parent, that he should be born blind? And Jesus answered, it was neither that this man sinned nor his parents, but it was in order that the works of God might be displayed in him. John 9:2-3. And this is just a few highlight reels of what they said. His friend said to him, if your children have sinned against him, he has delivered them into the hand of their transgression. That's what he said. Basically, like, yeah, your kids are in hell. You say God stores up their iniquity for their children. Let him pay it out on them that they may know it. I mean, he was doing burnt offerings for the kids. They think they know what to say. And if you return to the Almighty, you will be restored. If you remove wickedness far from your tent, they're basically saying, Job, you're a sinner. You're hiding something. And then they say in Job 4:7, consider now who, being innocent, has ever perished. And so, however, we know that here's the thing: Job has not done anything to deserve his suffering. And his friends' attacks make Job begin to doubt himself. And just when all of us, we need friends to believe in you, these people, they keep him from believing in himself. And sometimes when someone is suffering, the best thing to do is just not to say anything. I mean, I get awkward sometimes when stuff real bad happens and I just don't know what to say. Sometimes don't say anything at all. Just say, I'm praying for you, or just, you know what I mean? And there's other times you should, if God's calling you to say something, definitely do. So at the end of chapter 2, chapter 3, Job descends into darkness. He basically, he's cursing himself. He wishes he's never been born. He wishes that the day of his birth announcement be wiped off the calendar so that it may have never occurred. And Job contemplates the mystery of God. This will be part 2 of Job, World Build a Message, where Job begins to question God himself. This is where God answers Job. He didn't see God, but he saw a storm and he heard God's voice coming from it. And Job realized that no human has the right to demand that God explain how he works. Like Job, we must trust in our knowledge of God and believe his ways are the best, and he will work all things for the good. And so I just have a few more things to add before we go into worship, but follow me over to the screen here. Just give me a second to set it up. Walk over the water. Bear with me and try to load this. All right, almost there. Sorry. Oh man, I messed up. I put the wrong one in. Bear with me. It's a long URL. Almost done. Promise you. I'm gonna be mindful of your time. So, besides Jesus, every Bible hero is flawed like you and me. And Job, however, never got an endorsement. Job, however, he got an endorsement and a shout out from God. I mean, God's basically like, you're blameless of all these people in the world. Maybe we have trouble identifying with Job because we know we don't live up to his level of righteousness. And deep down, we believe life should be fair. And like Job, We're confused and scared, and when it's not. I know I am. And Christ was perfect and falsely accused. I can't do that. So anyway, skip that part. But Christ was perfect and falsely accused. And the Hebrew word tamim again is used to describe it. Job is someone that God says is blameless, pure, and perfect. In 2 Corinthians 5 and 20 through 21, God made him who had no sin be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. And Satan says, does Job fear God for nothing? Does he fear the Lord for free without accepting anything in return? Now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. So would we still serve God even if he doesn't bless us or do anything else for us from here on out? It says in Philippians 2:5-8, in your relationship with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing, I repeat, nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. So Job's friends think Job has sinned. They're those dudes. You have hidden sin. There's got to be something in there, man. There's too much happening to you. There's got to be something. And therefore, they think he deserves to suffer. But physical pain is not the only kind of suffering he has to endure. Job was accused by all his friends, and he was scorned and mocked. And he says, men have gaped at me with their mouth. They have struck me insolently on the cheek. They massed themselves together against me. And so Christ was also wrongly accused. In Isaiah 53, 4 through 5, surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering, that we considered him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. And so after all this stuff happens, and we'll have a part two, it's kind of towards the end. After all these occurrences happen with his friends back and forth, and in part two, God will tell him about how he operates the universe, and it's going to be very hard to do in VR. It says, and I'll put the scriptures up so you can read it. Job replies to Job, and he said to Eliphaz the Temanite, I am angry with you. Spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has. So now take 7 bulls and 7 rams and go to my servant Job and sacrifice a burnt offering for yourself. And my servant Job will pray for you. These are the guys that are like, you're praying for me? And I will accept his prayer and not deal with you according to your folly. You have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has. So Epiphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shunammite, these are some wild names, and Zophar the Nemathite did what the Lord told them, and the Lord accepted Job's prayer. So after Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes. And check this out. He gave him as twice as much as he had before. All his brothers and sisters, sorry, all his brothers and sisters and everyone who had known him before came and ate with him in his house. And they comforted and consoled him over all the trouble the Lord had brought on him. And each one gave him a piece of silver and a gold ring. And the Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former part. And he had 14,000 sheep. Listen to these numbers: 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. And he also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. The first daughter he named Geminiah, the second Keziah, and the third Ren Pach, I think. And nowhere in all the land were there found women as beautiful as Job's daughters, and their father granted them an inheritance along with their brothers. And so, after all this is an ancient story. Job lived 140 years, and he saw his children and their children to the fourth generation. And so Job died an old man and full of years. So let's think about the seven bulls and the seven rams with the burnt offering. Seven represents a full and complete world. Rhythm of practice in the Sabbath or resting every seventh day is one way. Friends, the Lord restored his fortunes. And check this out, he gave him his twice as much as he had before. So after all of his afflictions, as soon as he prayed for his friends, Job received a double portion of the property. Double everything he lost. 14,000 sheep now, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she asses. It's an interesting word. And exactly double the number of his portion from his earlier days. And so during certain eras of the Old Testament, the firstborn son often received a double portion of his father's inheritance. And Job's double portion points to Christ, who is the firstborn. Jesus Christ is called the firstborn over all creation. And in Colossians 1:15 through 20, almost done, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy, for God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. And so almost done. So Job thought that God had abandoned him, and he could have easily cursed God. I can't imagine being in that scenario. And so Christ too felt abandoned by God as he took on our sins at the cross. And then from noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. And about 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cries out these words in a loud voice, Eli, Eli, Abachani, which I'm messing up, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? And Job prophesies of the resurrection. For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth, and through after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh I see God. And so Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Just as Job's family was restored to him, the suffering of Christ restores humanity. Believers are reborn into the family of God, the brothers and the sisters and the sons and daughters of Christ.